Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Claudine.
Today we're here to talk about tax records, and it sounds boring, but I promise we'll make it exciting. People are unsure how long they should keep their tax records. I've heard 3 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, some...
Forever, right.
Maybe. We're going to be talking about the statute of limitations on assessments, the ASED.
The ASED, that's how long the IRS has to file a return on your, how much time they have to assess a tax if you don't file a return, or if you do file a return. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, because that sort of helps us figure this out, what this rule is. And when can the IRS do something really nasty to you, and when would you like to have the records to contest what they're saying about you?
So what exactly does ASED stand for?
Assessment Statute Expiration Date.
And what's the difference between that and CSED?
Well, the CSED, which I think
like
people are
a
getting...
quiz.
Yeah, right. CSED is Collection Statute Expiration Date. I do see that a lot of people are learning that the IRS does have the statute of limitations. I think overall there's been a lot more knowledge. People are a lot more sophisticated than they were. They're really learning a lot on the web about how the IRS works, and I hope that we're part of that solution there too. So it does seem like people are picking that up. But the ASED is something that I don't think people quite get. And to be honest, when I started this is a question clients would ask me, and I knew the answer, because the answer people always would say was 7 years. Oh, hold on to your records for 7 years. That was the conventional wisdom of the time. But it always didn't sit well with me, because I would go through the law. I'm like, no, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right. There's something wrong with that advice. And the reason why that you keep it for 7 years is because it's 1 year after the 6th year. And now I think we should probably go and explain why that 6th year comes in and where the 3 years comes in as well.
Yes, and part of the reason we wanted to do this is because if you do visit a very great website, irs.gov, run by some very good-looking people.
Right, and you know what? They really think about the perspective of the taxpayer when they write their content. They really make it so accessible.
So when we went to irs.gov, there was a period of limitations that applied to income tax returns. Okay.
They even say period of limitations. Even that, I'm already confused right there. You already got me confused. Period of limitations. What is it? Wait, period of...
Okay, so there's 7 things to explain the different periods of limitations.
You can't say statute of limitations, right? They can't, right?
Okay, so number 1, keep records for 3 years if situations 4, 5, and 6 below do not apply to you. Wouldn't you put that after 4, 5, and 6?
Right, well, what?
Okay, all right. So wait, now let's get to 2. Keep records for 3 years from the date you filed your original return, or 2 years from the date you pay the tax, whichever is later, if you file a claim for credit or refund after you file your return. What? Okay. Number 3. Keep records for 7 years if you file a claim for a loss from worthless securities or bad debt deduction. Okay. Keep records for 6 years if you do not report income that you should report, and it is more than 25% of the gross income shown on your return. Okay. Hold on, just a few more.
Make it stop.
Keep records indefinitely if you do not file a return. Keep records indefinitely if you file a fraudulent return. I've heard actually that criminals, they're very good record keepers.
Right.
Very good.
Okay.
And last but not least, keep employment tax records for at least 4 years after the date the tax becomes due or is paid, whichever is later.
If I was trying to write a satirical website of the IRS, I couldn't even come up. I would say, now, this is not believable, that you would present rules in such a way that is so incredibly dense. So you can see why there is a lot of misunderstanding about this, because this is written so poorly.
So let's try to make it for the everyman to understand.
The everyman, right?
Okay, so if you leave more than 25% of your income off your tax return, the IRS has a 6-year ASED. So what if the IRS claims you left 25% off based on their records, and you claim that's incorrect?
Right.
You got rid of your records because you didn't actually underreport by 25%. So you followed the rules, but now how do you prove that you... Right. You're sort of in a position, right? Because the normal rule, and typically most situations where most examinations happen, are within the last 3 years of something that's filed. Maybe a return you filed last year or the year before. That's usually the one that's going to be under examination, and the IRS will look to open up tax years 1 year ahead, 1 year behind, keep it in those 3 years. Then they'll look for you to
consent to extend the statute of limitations to assessment, which surprisingly is usually the right thing to do.
Okay.
It's surprisingly. Playing that game where you're trying to hammer them like, I'm going to beat you, usually would backfire. Sometimes you want to do it, but most of the time we look at it like, yeah, we'll actually extend it because they have so much power. And it will, as we'll see, because here it is, the IRS is saying, well, how do you know what the truth is what the IRS is going to assume. That is one of the most naive viewpoints of the world. And it's like presenting like the IRS, here's the one place, the rest of the world, man, people are going to screw it up. They're going to get it wrong. They're not going to know the truth. But the one place we can count on to get the facts right is the IRS. And so, all right, I didn't underreport 25% of my income. Therefore, I'm going to get rid of my returns. And so when the IRS comes back to say, hey, what's this all about? Well, I don't have those records anymore. You got rid of the records. Now you're really hiding stuff from us, right?
Suckery blue.
Right. So that's where we say, this is why we say, the 3-year rule we just throw out. That's not good.
No.
And just don't even think about the 3-year rule. And that's why that was the general thing. Like we would say 7 years, 1 year after that 6-year expired was always because just assume that they're going to say something bad. But when you go a little bit further, you realize, wait, that same sort of reasoning about why you never want to do the 3 years also applies because the IRS has this thing, when you file a fraudulent return, hang on to your records forever. Well, again, it's not fraudulent. Well, where are your records to support that?
Right.
I threw them out. I threw them out a long time ago, according to your instructions. Well, we saw this, and there's, here's a really good example of where something could look fraudulent when it's really not. There was a recent tax court decision where somebody wrote down he had a loss of $30,000. The IRS says, no, you had a fraudulent return. Well, why is that? Well, because you had income of $300,000. He's like, yeah, but it was offset by a loss. Yeah, there was income. But I had a bigger loss that ended up with that $20,000 loss.
Right.
And he ended up losing it because he didn't, and he ended up losing it. And they actually charged him with a tax evasion. When if he just says, oh no, here was this, proving the fact that no, this wasn't even a fraud. This return, the only thing wrong with the return is he just netted the numbers.
Oh, okay.
He didn't have the gross numbers. That was the issue, but the numbers were actually correct. So that's where he got, he was, and then he might have been trying to hide the ball a little bit from the auditor too. I did see that. I was like, that's where it doesn't work out so well.
The difference between fraud and an innocent mistake is intent.
Right.
And if you don't file a fraudulent return, you get rid of your records. The IRS says you filed a fraudulent return, so now you don't have your records. You don't have your
records to prove, like, well, regardless of my intent, if regardless of intent, if you didn't make a mistake, there's no fraud.
Right.
Even if you intended to defraud the U.S. government, but actually the return was correct, it doesn't matter. So maybe your numbers are right, but now you've gotten rid of the numbers to support your entire case. So that's where we say, geez, that 7 years doesn't really seem to be a great one because the IRS can always go back. Now, the truth is the IRS has limited resources. Okay, 98, 99% of the audits are going to be the last 3 years. But this idea that they could go back, and it's really, where the IRS is looking to do this, they want to take you down, basically. They have the power to say, we don't like you. We're going to look to see what you're doing if you're thumbing your nose at them, if you're embarrassing an IRS employee, if you're playing hide the ball. This is where they're going to say, okay, smart guy, this is what we're going to do. And they can be incredibly vindictive. And that's why if you're going to go down that path, which I would not advise, there's probably a little bit better way to massage the situation. You would want to have all of your records because they can easily come up with something to say, hey, we see this, and you don't have it on your return, and you have nothing to support your case, do you?
Like a cover your ass rule.
There you go. Right. So that's where the 7-year rule, I think, doesn't go far enough. And I think
another place where it wouldn't go far enough is huge right now. International reporting forms.
Right.
Consequences are huge if you don't report these. Penalties are massive. The IRS they've said they're targeting people. Right. They have these international practice units that basically say, here's who to go after. Here's exactly how to do it.
Here's how to screw them over brutally. These are the tricks that you can hammer people with left and right. And this is what, and here's the IRS. How long should you keep your information? Here's their page. They don't even mention the hottest issue going on right now, international taxation, FATCA, FBAR. They don't even mention it on here because it changes everything. Because first of all, FBAR, you have to keep your records for 5 years, even if you file your FBARs, even if you file your foreign bank account report, if you own $10,000 of a foreign bank account in the aggregate or more, even if you file it, you can be still assessed a penalty, a willful penalty for not keeping your records.
That's so stupid.
Right. Oh, it is.
Okay, so there's not only the FBAR, there's some other forms. 5471 for foreign corporations, 926 for transfers to foreign corporations. You've got 8865 for foreign partnerships, 3520A and 3520 for trusts, gifts, and foreign pensions, and of course FATCA, Form 8938. Right. So all of these, if you have missing or incomplete forms, the ASED stays open forever. On not only on that form, but your entire tax return.
Yes,
everything.
There is the biggest story, the hidden story, your entire return, so they can go and examine something else that would have been closed out, something that wasn't even 25%, something that wasn't fraudulent. They can go back and start re-examining, well, we don't know about your mileage. Where's your mileage log? I don't have that. My mileage log from what, 2001?
Yeah.
Right? I don't have that. I don't know. I can't remember what I was doing.
Yeah.
This is just sort of crazy. And the IRS isn't even mentioning this huge thing that affects so many people. Now I'm hearing there's 8 million expats. And then there's so many people who are first generation immigrants with stuff around the world. There's so many investors. I think when you add it up, what is it? Probably 20 million people that this would affect. The foreign income reporting that would affect, where they're not keeping their records, and the IRS is saying, oh yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to get you. You have a huge liability, and they're sort of leading you down the road. And here you're like, well, I relied on your website. Well,
didn't help me.
Yeah, and the website's not binding law. It's not.
What if you're doing the offshore voluntary disclosure?
Yeah, well, the IRS will, if you're doing the full offshore voluntary disclosure because you did do something, maybe, a little bit... whatever. I'm not here to judge.
Nope.
You would do an 8-year look-back period.
Okay.
So, boy, I hope you didn't get rid of your records. And this sometimes it gets a little bit of, it gets a little bit of an issue. The only time so far that we have not been able to get records, there's only one case I can think of with our friend from Nigeria getting records here. But that's not a time issue. That's just an actual... You can't get them without getting kidnapped kind of thing. And then some other ones here and there we haven't been able to get. And you know what we do? We use our best guess. We're like, well, look, here's some account information. Here, this is what our best reasonable guess is. And so you try to do that. So usually we're able to go back, now with record keeping. And this is sort of our advice now. Look, you can keep everything electronically. You don't need to have boxes of stuff that you're like, oh my God, every time you move, right? Especially you're overseas, right? Yeah. Well, you're living in a small place. You don't have a place, a storage locker for all this stuff. And who knows if you're in a humid climate or something.
It's funny. People say, if there was a house fire, the first thing I would grab is my photographs. And I'm like, I would grab my file cabinet. I'm such a heartless, organized. I really need those files.
Really need to, yeah. I've gone through a lot of flooded documents. All the mildew, like uncrinkling them all packed together. That happens a lot too.
But you know what? Is saying that everything is now saved electronically makes it even easier for the IRS to go back as well, not just us.
Right. It makes it easier for them, but they're not necessarily going to find the things that help you. So things that help you, you're really going to want to hang on to.
Yep.
So storing them securely somewhere would be critical. And that's where we say, when someone asks me, how long should I hang on to my tax records? I say, as long as you can. Really, that's really the best advice I would give to somebody.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, if you have any questions or concerns, if you're experiencing a tax issue and you need some assistance, don't hesitate to contact us. It's info@irsmedic.com. You can visit irsmedic.com for more information. You can like and comment below, and we want to thank you so much for watching. IRS Medic, the law offices of Parent LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.